The science of happiness. How can we measure the happiness of a nation? What causes one nation to have greater well-being, more prosperity, or happiness than another? Most economists use the GDP to compare various countries. The GDP, or gross domestic product, is the value of all goods and services from a nation in one year. If we look at GDP, the top 5 countries in this order are the United States, China, Japan, Germany, and France. However, in recent years, there has been growing dissatisfaction with this measure. One drawback of using GDP is that disasters such as storms and fires and social ills such as sickness and crime actually improve a country's GDP because they cause an increase in economic activity. Also, GDP doesn't tell us if there is a big gap between the rich and poor in a country, and it certainly doesn't tell us if the people are happy. Increasingly, there is understanding that GDP is not enough of a measure of a nation's well-being. Human Development Index. Since 1993, the United Nations has used the HDI, or Human Development Index, to measure the well-being of a nation. Many people see the HDI as an improvement over the rigid GDP because it has 3 components instead of just one. The HDI measures income, average years of education, and life expectancy, or how long people can expect to live. Life expectancy is a good way to measure both people's basic health and the healthcare system in countries. According to HDI, the top 5 countries in this order are Norway, Australia, the Netherlands, and the United States and New Zealand, quite different from the GDP rankings. What's missing from the HDI? Not everyone enthusiastically accepts the HDI. However, the National Bureau of Economic Research points out that the HDI does not include a measure of mental well-being, in other words, happiness. 2 researchers, Blanche Fowler and Oswald, point out that many areas of everyday life can influence a person's happiness. Employment, the divorce rate, real income, friendship, traffic jams, crime, health, and much else. The HDI does not reflect most of these areas. Happiness and Bhutan. Back in 1972, an interesting idea came out of the tiny Himalayan country of Bhutan. Bhutan's king began to refer to country's GNH, or gross national happiness. The idea is that happiness is far more complex than economic growth. This concept is now part of the constitution of Bhutan, and there are regular polls where people answer questions about their satisfaction in 9 areas of life, including a good balance of time at work and in leisure, psychological well-being, and a clean environment. The government makes decisions based on the results of these questionnaires. The spread of this concept. This concept of measuring G and H is catching on worldwide. In many countries, the use of happiness polls has become a trend, a general direction of change that is becoming common. In 2009, the 5th International Gross National Happiness Conference was held in Basel. At such conference, people discuss the various polls and their results. According to John de Graaf in Yes Magazine Online, year after year, such polls find that the countries with the highest levels of satisfaction are Denmark, Finland, the Netherlands, and Sweden. What do these countries have in common? They all have a good work-life balance, a small gap in income between the rich and the poor, strong social solidarity, agreement among people, and strong social safety nets, ways to help people in difficult situations. These countries all have high taxes too. Although these 4 countries have high income, the happiness polls also show that many poor countries, one with a low GDP, have high life satisfaction. One of these is Costa Rica, where the average income is low, but where there is a high level of education and health care, and where there is passionate solidarity about the importance of the environment. A new measure. As this concept of G and H becomes more popular, there is an effort to find a new global measure for well-being. Various organizations have suggested ways to measure the well-being of nations instead of using the HDI. The proposal of the International Institute of Management, for example, is similar to the G&H poll in Bhutan, but they call it GNW, or Gross National Wellness. It measures 7 types of wellness: economic, environment, physical, mental, workplace, social, and political. What happiness is and isn't. We have learned a lot in recent years about what makes a happy person or a happy nation. According to the National Bureau of Economic Research, there are several characteristics. First, money does buy a reasonable amount of happiness, but for most people, have a higher income does not make as much of a difference as other life events such as marriage. Second, nations do not seem to get happier as they get richer. Another finding is that happiness is U-shaped in age. This means that people are generally happy when they are young, then become less happy in middle age, but they become happier again as they get older. Finally, women usually report higher well-being than men, and more educated people report higher levels of happiness than people with less education. Conclusion. Clearly, some nations are happier than others. It is possible to measure the happiness of a nation, but it is challenging. Happiness is more complex than people used to think it was. Happiness does not seem to have an essence, a central quality. Instead, it is the sum total of many characteristics. One of these is money, but it is certainly not the most important one.